let's make the web frames. That's this piece right here. It could be a shelf, and a shelf usually happens somewhere like here if you don't have a drawer, right? Because you don't want things to fall through. So you would make a shelf instead of a web frame. But if it's always drawers, or if you have an opening here, right, that would also be a web frame because you don't see it. You see the front. Now take a look at our worksheet. We have shelves and we have web frames. To make a shelf, you first determine the finished size, as shown on the plan, thickness, width times length. So on the plan, here's the web frame, there and there. The size of the web frame, or the shelf, they're going to be exactly the same size, is shown in section C. And in this case, it is 14 inches wide by 18 inches long. And that's going to be the size of the shelf also. Now this is the apprentice. I am making the journeyman. So the journeyman is the same size. I'm going to be going the number of shelves you need. In this case, I don't need any, but my size is going to be 3/4, and it's going to be 14 long. The width is that 18, and you'll note that that is 1 inch less than this, the overall size of that case. And on a journeyman, that size is 23. So 1 inch less would be 22. So that's the size of my shelf. You're going to then make a panel glue up larger than the finished size and similar to the methods you use to make the case parts. Then you'll square it to the finished size using the Pagetic method. Fairly easy. You've done this procedure before while making the case parts. Web frames are a little more challenging. So let's walk through how to do it. First, we determine the finished size as shown in the plans, and it will be the same as the shelf. So there's my thickness, 3/4. This will be 22 inches. This will be 14 inches. Note that this rail is in the front of the drawer case. That's what's going to show. So I want that piece to be pretty nice. My next step is determine the rough size. We make it bigger, and then we square it to make it the perfectly squared, which it never is when we make a frame to start with. So we just make it larger, and that means that we make it 1/8 inch bigger on each side. And that's what this dashed line represents, is 1/8 of an inch larger in size all the way around. And we're going to make it a 1/16 inch thicker, represented here by 13/16. So if we have over here 14 inches and we add 1/8 and 1/8, this size is now going to be 14 1/4. Here, it's 22 inches, adding 1/8 and 1/8, it's going to be 22 1/4. The size of our stiles and rails here are 2.5 inches. That's a standard for all of us. That means that I can now calculate the size of this part from there to there by going 22 1/4 minus 2.5. minus 2.5, that's 5 inches. So this size will be 17 1/4. our next step is to make a cut list for those parts of the step number 2. And we're going thickness times width times length. So our thickness is 13/16. Incidentally, the number of stiles and rails that I'm making is 4 because I need 2 web frames. The width will be 2.5 on both of them. For my stiles, which is this one, 17 1/4. My rails will be 13/16 by 2.5. The size of it, that's the rails, will be 14 1/4. Now I'm ready to go make these parts and the frame. Here's my procedures. First, I'm going to square the cut list, make all of those 8 pieces. To do that, I use the Pagitum method. Next, I will lay it out and mark the dowel holes. I'll cut the dowel holes, then I'll dry fit and glue it, and then I'll square the frame to its finished size using the Pagitum method. And I'll walk you through all of these. Shelves, we determined the size. This is an example of a shelf. 3/4 thick, 22 wide, 14 long. The grain direction is very important, and it's correct on this shelf. A web frame, here are my parts, and I've now done number 1, which is to square the cut list. I've got 4 stiles and 4 rails. In this case, these are my 4 rails. These are my 4 stiles. It's always wise to put them together and make sure they're uniform in their sizes. Those look great. So now I'm going to do a layout. And I'm going to mark them. I'm going to mark their locations, 1 so that I can assemble them easily later. So my number 3 and my number 4. Then I'm going to mark where the dowels go. It's not critical, their exact location. I'm just going to bring them in from the edge a ways and using a square, engineering square to draw those lines. That's where I'll cut my dowels. Right there, right there. Okay, I'm cutting it right on those lines. And come on down here with me, and you can see this line in back. That's what I have to register that line to. And I've got to be very exact with it. Get it right on. The foot pedal clamps the board and brings the cutter in. And as I release it, it releases all the mechanism. Don't put your hand under there, that hurts. That's why there's a guard there. To turn the motor on, it's done on the side. That's the cut I just made. I'm going to do its mate, number 1. to do a test fit with the dowels. Put them together. That looks good. Notice there is a slight discrepancy here, and that's pretty common. You can be off by about a 1/16, and it still works fine. If it's more than that, then it generally means that one of your holes is not drilled exactly on the line. And if you need to, just go back and re-drill it. Open up that hole a little bit more, and then this will shift to where you want it. I'm going to go ahead and re-drill or drill all the rest of my joints. First, we want to dry fit. So I'm looking for tight joints, which they are. They look good, and they're relatively flush. They're not perfect, but that's why we made it big, and we can square it later. Looks great. Let's glue it. If you have some dowels that don't come out very easily, some pliers and carefully wiggle them out. Fill the holes about 1/3 of the way full. That squeeze out is a good thing. That means it's all full and it comes up through the flutes of the dowel. Fill the opposing side. That's great. We want all that squeeze out, meaning it's covering all that area. Good and snug. And wipe off excess. Don't forget the back side. Get the best you can underneath the clamps. What we don't get, we'll have to scrape off later. And I want that to be minimal. Scraping is way harder than wiping off. Make sure my name is on it. Big and bold. And this is going to take 15 minutes to set up. That'll be about 11:10.